Good afternoon, everybody. It's like weird being back in person in like an actual user group meeting again. Even though the vast majority of everybody is going to be online today, we do have a decent smattering of people here. And for everyone who showed up, you get a free cookie and a free drink. So if you're attending online, you missed out on all the cool stuff. And you missed actually seeing people's faces that you haven't seen in a while. So thank you for those people that showed up in person. Thank you for those people that showed up online. Yes, we'll answer questions. So as questions come in the chat, Jeff, I'm going to have Jeff Smith kind of moderate that as we go through that to make sure I don't miss anything. It kind of takes up a bit of our room, but I want to turn it over really quick to Ms. Sagata Jones, who wanted to do a quick introduction to everybody, inviting us out to GESD for the day.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cindy Sagata Jones, proud superintendent of Glendale Elementary School District. I just wanted to say welcome to Glendale Elementary. I do appreciate everything that you do on your end to make all of our systems work. I don't like getting emails that saying systems are down or we have a problem. That makes me very nervous. I'm always wondering, oh gosh, are we going to get paid? Or do I have to tell people we're not going to get paid or anything else? But truly do appreciate your work, and I know you're committed to your profession. Again, thank you and welcome to Glendale Elementary School District.
There's raises in everybody's checks who clapped. Although I might get vetoed at the board meeting. I don't know. So first of all, let me introduce myself for those of you who haven't seen me in a while, or at least haven't seen me in a beard and with hair. My name is Mike Martinez. I work for the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office. Welcome to our first official School ERP Pro user group. We do have a couple mentions today. Miss Diana Betancourt could not be here today. She is not feeling well. And in today's day and age, if you are not feeling well, you have to stay away from everybody until you're feeling better. And then probably 5 days after that. So Diana, if you're hearing this or see this later, we hope you're feeling well. We miss you. Also on the line, we have Miss Stephanie Bowens from Tyler, who's going to be doing our first part of the presentation today. Just a quick kind of go around. We'll have the first hours kind of booked for Stephanie talking about employee access and the requirements for that and what we're going to need to do. Then we'll have a little bit of break and we'll go into sort of tips and tricks. We were going to kind of lean on Diana for that, but since she's not here, so we're going to be making up tips and tricks as we go along. So if you're here or if you're online and you have a tips and tricks that you would like to share, please throw it out there and we'll cover it and make sure kind of everybody's on the same page. And then we'll end with CellSense. We have our own, from my own office, Ms. Tracy Rockwell, who'll be going through CellSense, has several example spreadsheets that we can go ahead and share with everybody. If you're online, we will send this out to everyone. We will send the example spreadsheets out to everyone later so they can go ahead and use the CellSense examples that we'll cover. With that, Stephanie, are you ready to go? Oh, look, it's got the updated logo.
It does. I've got all the fancy stuff for you guys today. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for allowing me to come in and crash your party today. Let me turn, there we go, so you guys can see me. So what I'm going to do today for you is I'm going to go through some of the setup that's going to be required for the new employee access. And we'll go through the setup that's in the core, and then we'll do some administration stuff on the employee access side. And then hopefully, if I have my timing right, we'll have plenty of time for questions and things like that. So I will definitely try to keep an eye on the chat. I do apologize. Sometimes I get going and I don't check that as often, but I will do my best to keep an eye on that chat box and answer those questions as we go. If you do have questions as we kind of go through this, please feel free to interrupt and stop me and ask those as we go, so that way I make sure I get all of those questions answered for sure. So what we're going to do to start off with is we're going to go through all the setup that's required in the core, and then we'll go through and do the administration piece on employee access. So we're going to do the two pieces in conjunction. So with starting out in the core, and I keep saying core, I apologize, I should use better terminology, within the accounting application, that is where we're going to start. And with that, this can all be done within this accounting application as either before or after you get your URLs from deployment. So you've put in your request, you want to be upgraded, everything's great. They've done all their IT stuff, all your Active Directory stuff is good to go. They hand you your URLs. What we're going to do in here can be done either before or after you get those URLs. So first things first is you want to set up your connection group within accounting so that way employee access is pointed towards the right fiscal year that you want it to. So in order to do that, when we're logged in here, we want to go to security, workflow configuration, and then employee access connection groups. Now there's two menu options that you're going to see down here. The first one, of course, is the connection groups. And then the second one is this impersonation. Both of those are controlled by administrative group rights. Administrative rights. So you actually have to go into administration and turn them on like you do other modules and things like that for that particular, those two menu options. The employee access impersonation, that is specifically for benefits enrollment. So if you do not have the benefits enrollment package, that does not do anything for you, basically. So you can just ignore that. You can keep that turned off. It's just much easier. If you do have benefits enrollment, then that will work with that benefits enrollment module. And I know we're going to have questions about the benefit stuff. So I'm going to try to make sure that I touch on that. I'm going to write myself just a little bit of a note so I don't forget to touch on that when we get to the Q&A stuff. So you want to set your group. When you open up this menu, now, normally what you guys are used to doing is on the DNN platform, you can go in and there's one big screen that handles all the different modules that you've created. This is very similar to that. The difference is it's just broken up just a little bit differently. So up here in this default connection group, you are going to have a list of all of your connection groups for your district. This is where you want to pick the connection group of the fiscal year that you want your information to point towards. So drop that menu down. You want it to be the most recent fiscal year. Perfect. You're going to pick that. Now, the very first time you come in here, all of these are going to be blank. So as you pick your very first one, this default connection group, what you can do is just go down through these other four options and select the use default. That way, that just tells it, I want everything to point towards this group right here. Now, we're coming up on fiscal year rollover. So there's a lot of places that they have to have their leave still pointed towards last year, even though they want stuff, or yeah, they want like leave pointed towards next year or contracts pointed towards next year, but they still need all their paychecks and that kind of stuff to be pointed towards the current fiscal year. You can still do that. You would just drop that menu down and select the new fiscal year in this drop down for like leave requests. And then that way it tells employee access leave request needs to point towards this year. So we've got the updated balances, whatever the case is. Same thing for contracts. Select that drop down for the next fiscal year. And then that way, all of the contracts that are done in the next fiscal year, they'll populate correctly and they'll be able to accept those and do those like they're normally used to. So this screen right here controls those, where those pages point towards, very similar to how the DNN controls it within. I want to say that menu option is like workflow connections. I think that's what it's called, but there's a settings in each module that you can change those connection groups as well too. Very similar to that. Once you pick it, hit OK. It's going to give you a confirmation. Are you sure you want to make these changes? Yes, I do. Save it. You're good to go. You have it all pointed towards the right year. Another thing that we can set up within here is if we go into portal default settings, there's a couple things within here that plug into employee access as well. Bear with me while my screen opens. It's a little slow today. And I keep clicking, so it's doing this. It's dinging at me. Okay, so with this, there's a couple fields within here that plug into employee access. And then there's also a section that you can set up all of your resource documentation as well too. So come on, I know it's trying. I do apologize for that delay. There we go. My VM has been running very slow today. Here we go. So we're going to ignore these three things up here. These three things, these three drop downs up here, that is for DNN. We don't need any of those for employee access. What we care about is these three checkboxes right here. Allow employee to edit contact, personal and preferred email address change, and allow leave requests in excess of available balances. Those checkboxes do plug into employee access. So this allows you to, do you want them to edit their contact info? Yes or no? Do you want to allow them to edit email address information? Check that box. Same thing with the leave request. This plugs into that leave request feature and will allow them to either go in excess of their balance or not. That's a district preference, so you can control that for them. These three options right here don't matter for employee access, so we're going to skip those. The employee tax form default, that plugs into Symmetry for when they're doing their W-4s. That all works the exact same as well, so you can check those for verification. Allow document types tab. If you have TCM, you'll have this tab. That's to basically allow which document types out there on employee access or not. It works the same for DNN. If you don't have TCM, you're not going to have that. And then the big one that we need, the employee access tab. This resource document section, this is where you will upload any of your resource documents, any documentation your district needs, basically, excuse me, I apologize, or your shared location for all of your documents. I know there's a lot of documentation coming from different places that everybody needs to have access to. So this is that place where you would put that shared location where you have all those documents. Throw that URL out here, and that will save it. And then they'll have that within that resource section on the homepage for all of your employees. You can use this resources for any kind of document type, PDFs, Word documents, that kind of thing. And then you can do URLs as well too. So your shared location for all of your documents, or if you have a specific district website that everybody needs to have access to for board members or the like athletic director or anything like that, you can put all of that out here and then it will show in that resource section. Within this settings section down here as well, we've got a couple more controls that you can plug into. Allow editing of demographic information. Do you want them to edit that info off or on? Allow editing of direct deposits. You can take that control and give them the ability to do that. That also works in conjunction with the payroll default settings for requiring an attachment on a direct deposit. So that plugs into those two things for the direct deposits. So you can allow them to edit direct deposits. You can choose not to, make them go through the district office, whatever the case is for that. And then this allow editing of dependents. This actually is something new that we're putting out here. This is coming out on the patch scheduled for 3/29. We've got lots and lots of feedback from districts about wanting to be able to lock down that dependent section within the employee profile. So we're putting that control of allowing the editing of those dependents out here. So you can either allow them to edit dependents or lock that down, and then they cannot edit dependents on employee access. They'll be able to view them, just not change them. So that piece is coming out on the 29th though. So you guys are seeing it firsthand for the first time, but it's not quite there yet. We just have to finish doing some testing on it. And then, like I said, on the patch on the 29th, that's when it's coming. Tax documents utility that's down here. So I don't miss this. When you say editing, what does that mean? That means making any kind of changes or changes to your dependent information. So with all of this, we've got editing. That basically just says, can they go out and make changes to that particular section on employee access? Can they go out and make changes to their demographic information? Can they go out and make changes to their direct deposit info, to that dependent information within there? So changing last names or changing bank accounts that things are going to, changing that kind of stuff. Will it still need to be approved? Yes, all of the approval processes are exactly still the same. So if they make any kind of contact or profile changes, if they make any direct deposit changes, they make any W-4 changes, all that stuff is still exactly the same. It still flows into the exact same screens that we're used to seeing them in as well too. Nothing changes on employee maintenance or within the deductions and benefits until it's actually been approved within those specific screens, just like we're used to. So all that stuff stays the same. Perfect, awesome question. The last thing on this little portal default settings screen is the tax utility. This tax utility for the documents is for importing in your old W-2s into the current fiscal year so you can actually see them. So what you're used to seeing on DNN is that you have to create those extra modules every year to put out the old W-2s. So that's a little bit different. You still see it all together and you'll still see it on the Pan Tax tab. The difference is that you just have to import them into this current year. So with this, so you're logged into your FY 21-22 data. I want my 2020 tax documents to show out on employee access. So I would come into portal default settings, go down to this tax document section. In the source connection, you're going to drop that menu down and find the connection group that has your 2020 tax documents. So it should be 2021, I think, if I have my years right. So you'll find your 2021, hit the import button. It's going to pop up a message that's basically exactly what that wording is right here that you see. This is going to import tax documents from another group. This may result in duplicate documents if you do it more than once. So if you do it twice for 2021, you're going to see 2 W-2s for 2020. Super easy to fix if that happens. It's happened for a lot of districts. It takes like not even 2 minutes to fix, but it can result in duplicate documents. So you want to make sure you only want it once, and then confirmation, yes, I want to do it, and it's done. And then out onto your employee access in the prior tax document section on your pay and tax tab, you'll have your prior tax documents for 2020. Same thing for 2019. Pick your 2019 source connection for that connection group, hit import. Are you sure you want to? Please only do it once. Hit yes, and it pulls in your 2019s as well too. So that gives you the ability to bring in those old tax documents and those old W-2s here real quickly for your prior tax documents. Now, when it comes to, like, you guys have all probably already done your 2021s, that's all stays the same. So you do all that stuff in W-2 processing, and then actions, update all to show in portal, and they publish out there like normal. So all that stuff still stays the same. This is just a little bit different to get those prior tax documents. Now, you only have to do this once. So if you've already done this and you've got all, like, your 2020s are transitioned and your 2019s are transitioned, you don't ever have to do that again. When you roll your fiscal year, all of those documents will roll with your tables and they'll be there for next year. So when you do this import, you only have to do once. You don't have to do it every single year. Like when you're doing your fiscal year rollover, you don't have to do this extra step. It's one time, you're good to go. So perfect. So that's all we need in payroll, or I'm sorry, portal default settings. I almost said payroll. Last thing that we need to do in the core is we need to assign user roles. So for user roles, there's a couple different options to give your employees, and all of these user roles are mass updatable. So you can filter your grid however you need to, however you want to, on check location, department, address, whatever makes sense for you guys, you can do. So for that, with this being able to mass update, it makes it just a little bit faster and a little easier. Now, the first time that your employees sign in, if you don't give them any user roles at all, that's totally okay. They're going to immediately have their profile, and they're going to immediately have their pay and tax information. So everybody always gets profile info and pay and tax information. Anything on top of that is associated with a user role. So we want to give them that ability to do it. So all your prior tax documents, paychecks, all that good stuff, they immediately get that, all their profile information and everything that's associated in that profile with emergency contacts, achievements, which plugs into certificates and endorsements, dependents, all of that is included in the profile. So they immediately get that. No matter who they are, they immediately get that. So with the user roles, I'm going to open up this very first record. There are a couple different options for your user roles. There is going to be your tasks user, which is associated with accepting contracts and doing any kind of employee tasks for MyVisions, as well as user-defined forms. There is the time off user role, which is for requesting leave requests on employee access. If you do not do that on the portal, that's okay. We don't have to turn that on. We have other avenues for that. So the leave request is associated with the time off user. There's going to be a time off viewer role that you guys are going to see on here as well too. That's coming out in the 329 patch as well. And then there's a time entry user and a benefits user as well. So starting from the top, I kind of went a little bit backwards when I was listing them out, waiting for this to load. Benefits user is associated with benefits enrollment. So if you don't have the benefits enrollment package, that's totally okay. Just leave that off for everybody. And then the benefits piece on employee access won't even show. You won't have to worry about it. Tasks user, if you need them to accept contracts, user-defined forms, employee tasks, you want to make sure you give them that tasks user so they have the ability to see my tasks and complete those outstanding tasks as well. Time off user, like I was saying, that has to do with actually requesting leave on employee access. The time off viewer is actually attached to the time off history section, where all that transaction information is going to come into play. They want to view all of that historical transaction, opening balances, accruals, used, adjustments, all of that stuff. They have that running marker that is viewable within there as well. So that's something that we got lots of feedback on as well too, is that some districts wanted to be able to actually control that screen of whether or not you could view that information. So we just turned it into an actual user role and plugged into that. That piece as well is coming out on the 29th. So that's a new addition based on lots of feedback that we got. So right now, if you're on 2021, you don't see it, but after it gets patched out and after that comes out on the 29th, you'll have that. Once again, that is mass updatable too. This last option down here is the time entry user. We built a new daily time entry module specifically for employee access and iVisions that this plugs into. So if you do not have the daily time entry licensed module, that's okay. You just don't have the license key and you won't even see this time entry user. So if that's something that you're interested in, then we would get you with inside sales and have them do some demos and stuff like that and then get that in the works for you. But if you don't see this time entry user, totally okay. It just means that you don't have the license key for it, and that's okay too. This user identifier right here, this is actually a read-only field. This is where when an employee logs into employee access for the first time and they successfully register, this crazy long alphanumeric number that populates in here, that's basically a authorization token for them that says, yep, you are who you are, you're part of our district, you're supposed to be here, you have authorization to log into employee access. And then it will not ask them to register again. So it saves that information for you and for the employees so that they don't ever have to register again. And then also you in the district offices know, yep, this person's good to go, they've registered successfully. So once you've got all that selected, and you can do this at an individual level, and I kind of keep repeating it too, you can do it at a mass update level as well too. So like new hires and things like that, as you're putting in individual employee maintenance records or updating things for people, sometimes you kind of need, adjust roles, things like that. You can do that on an individual level or that mass update. So it gives you the options. And when it comes to setup in the accounting application, that's it. Set your connection groups. Set up your resource documents, double check your couple of options for editing and not editing. All that stays the same from within the DNN stuff as well too. So if you don't need to change that, you don't have to. If you want to, you can. Resource documents and then user roles, and that's it. All right, so when you're signed in at an administrative level, you can come into what's called the enterprise launcher, which is this option right here that we've got, and you've got 3 different widgets that will kind of direct you in what you need to, where you need to go basically. We've got the employee access, which that's going to take you straight into employee access and give you all of that information for your specific self. We've got manage users, where you would manage some of your users, your manually added and your administrators, and then manage portal. We're going to start in manage portal and then we're going to end in users. Manage portal is where you can do some of the little bit of customization that we have out here, as well as monitoring any kind of announcements or anything that need to go out for your district. So within this portal settings section, links and contacts is really what you need to worry about. Links, you can go in here and update these links for the different items within the homepage. So in the footer section, you can have different terms of use links. So if you need to have something specific for your district in regards to maybe the county or something specific for your district office, anything like that, you can plug that in there. Same thing with privacy policies and portal contact, that kind of stuff. You can plug those URLs and then it will direct them when they click on those links, it will send them to the right URL that they need to. Contacts is the other big section that we need to pay attention to, only because when this is very first launched, this is usually like deployment information from Tyler. So it's got one of our deployment specialists in it, because it's got to have something in there when we first deploy it. You want to make sure that you come in here and update this information to be your specific district or your specific business contact, the site administrator, that kind of stuff. So that is something you just want to make sure that way in case anything, we need that info for whatever reason, it's up to date within here. Branding images, this is where you can actually change the banner on the back of not only your enterprise launcher, but from what your employees will see when they log into the homepage as well. So you could do your district logo, you could do whatever basically you wanted to for a picture on here. I've seen some districts do some really cool different like literary quotes that end up being really nice. The only thing with this is that you want to make sure that it's at least 890 pixels wide, excuse me, 240 pixels high, and no bigger than 2 megabytes. You do kind of have to play with it sometimes to make sure that you can get it to look right with your district logo. So that's something that can kind of take a little bit of time, but once you get it, it looks really cool. So, and you've got the ability to you like replace it, because the one that comes within there, you can replace it, just hover and that'll populate, upload your image, and then you can preview it and see what it looks like. And then when you're ready, publish, and it will publish it out and you can see that change. Municipality logo works the exact same way as well too. Add image and then publish that as well. Custom messages. This is the message that's going to land on your enterprise launcher page for your administrators to see. So I just have something real simple. Welcome to the new and exciting employee access. You can have something more specific to your district though. Whatever you want that message to be, that's what you can make it be. Welcome to our great school district. We're going to have an amazing year, or whatever the case is, you can plug that within here. There's a little bit of font editing that you can do with it as well too. Same thing, you can preview your message, see what it's going to look like, make changes, do that kind of thing, and then save it. This employee access section down here, this is specific for administrators as well. You've got to have that portal administrative or the announcements at group, which we're going to go over here in just a second in order to see this particular section. ERP configuration is basically where your URL is housed that takes the whole of employee access and points it towards the dispatch service, which it uses to communicate. There really is never a reason to go into ERP configuration for administrators unless the site is down for some reason and there's a test connection that you can run within there that will basically communicate with the dispatch and let you know if it's up and running and if it's communicating properly. That's the only reason to ever go into ERP configuration. I've been recommending to all of our districts and all of our clients, all the user group meetings that I've talked to, is don't ever go into ERP config unless you've got somebody from IT, either your IT or our IT on the line with you. If that URL within the ERP config gets changed for any reason, it will stop communicating with the dispatch and it can bring the site down. So I just have recommended to everybody, don't go in there. You really don't ever need to. So we would just kind of one of those areas to stay out of. We give access to the administrators for it to make sure that if they do need to, for anything, they need to test that connection, anything like that, then they do have access to that and they have the ability to do that. So I just stress, make sure that you have somebody from IT on the phone with you or there with you if you ever do need to go in there. The big thing that we care about in this little section is this announcements though. This announcements is where you can add any kind of, hey, this is coming up in our district, or any just message that you want to send out. My go-to for everything is benefits enrollment. I do benefits enrollment for School ERP Pro. So I always throw in a benefits enrollment message out there, but you can use it for anything. I've got a couple other examples, basketball tournaments are coming or summer's coming up. You can do whatever works for your district, for the time of the year. Hey, welcome back to the school year. Enjoy your winter break. Summer's coming, everybody's excited, whatever the case is. And within here, you can do hyperlinks, you can add documentation. When you add these in, you have the, put your title, whatever you want that to be. You can do start and end dates. I want it to start showing on this day. I want it to stay showing, so you don't need to put an end date, or I want it to stop showing on Thursday. Put Thursday's date in there, whatever the case is. And then on your body of text, you can put in anything that you want to in that body, on that text section. So basketball tournaments are April 9th through April 5th. Maybe that's a good date, I don't know. And please, make sure you're planned properly for classes or something like that. And then you can use the different types of font tools that are up here for this rich text editor to change things. And like I said, you can do hyperlinks within here. You can add pictures within here. You can do all that kind of fancy stuff within the announcement section to kind of jazz things up a little bit. This priority button, basically that just gives it priority to the top of the list on the announcements. You can have more than one item marked as priority. It just categorizes it at what was my first item that was marked as a priority, what was my second item that was marked as a priority, what was my third item. So it will kind of categorize it like that when it comes to having multiple priority items, but you can definitely have more than one. And you can keep these around out here for as long as you want to. There's no time limit on these. So if you have one that you know you're going to use every year, you know you're always going to have benefits enrollment at the same time, you know you're always going to have basketball tournaments around the same time, you want to keep your message the same, you don't really want to change anything but maybe some dates, you can leave these out here for as long as you want to, and then just edit those every year, or you can trash them, get rid of them, and do new ones every year too. So it's up to you on what works best for your district when it kind of comes to maintaining these. They can stay out here or they can go, whatever's easier. I'm going to jump back a tab. There is this support tracing out here as well too, just so you guys know, that is more of a troubleshooting tool that if we need to do any kind of a trace on your site, if something's going on and we need to be able to trace it to give to our developers to decode anything like that, that is what that particular menu option is for. So once again, that's not something that you guys should ever need to do anything with or mess with in any way. That's more of a support tool for our side of things on the dev side. So we can run some traces if we need to, if anything ever happens. So now we're going to go back to the enterprise dashboard and we're going to go in and we're going to look at manage users. Manage users is where you're going to manage any administrative or manually added user that you need. So within here, when deployment hands over your URLs and they say, here you go, you're ready to go. You've come in here, you've done a couple of things on the portal settings side, got your branding image good, got your custom messages good. You're going to come, you can come into user management and do what you need to do with some of your users. We're going to hit groups first. Within groups, what will happen is that when deployment hands over your URLs, they're going to automatically set up this portal administration group for you. This portal administration group is really the highest level of authority on employee access that we can give to the districts. This gives you access to all those portal settings, the announcement sections, the trait, all that kind of stuff. It allows you to be able to manage all of your users as well too, so that you can do what you need to do for your site and take care of your people. With that, that's already going to be set up. And then when they set up your very first administrator, they'll give them that portal administration group. And then it's up to that first administrator to set up their other administrators of the site if there needs to be more than one. As you can tell, I got a bunch of different groups in here because I was doing some testing and messing with stuff. But really and truly at a district level, you guys aren't going to need to have more than 2 groups. You'll want to have your portal administration, which like I said, that gets set up by deployment in the very beginning. And then you want to set up a second one that is basically for announcements. So give your group a name, give it a description. It can be the same, it can be different, doesn't matter. And then in the product drop down here, you're going to want to make sure that you have employee access selected. This gives you the ability to handle those announcements as well. So it lets you do the announcements piece of it and gives you access to that screen. You can do a resident as well too, because there is resident access that comes along with employee access that is for former employees. So you can give that group the administrative access to that as well too. Once you get a group name, a description, the product is not required. So if you want to have more than 2 groups, if you want to have a group for your substitutes or a group for maybe non-network users, on top of that to categorize employees, you definitely can. It's just not required. You don't need to. It doesn't really do anything other than just categorizes your people for you. There's no other extra privileges or anything like that that they get or that they would get out here because everything's handled through the user roles within employee maintenance. But if you want to, you can add another group in here or more than one in regards to being able to do that. You just want to make sure that you do not give them any of these items within the product, because then it elevates those privileges for them. And for some of those manually added users, we don't want them to have those extra privileges. So once you've got your groups, when you go into users, this is where you actually assign, number one, you assign your administrators within here, and then you do your non-network users. So anybody that's does not have an Active Directory account with your district. So for that, add user, very simple. First name, last name, email address, and then select your group. Now for your administrators, this is where you would want to make sure that you give them the portal administration group if they need it, or give them the employee access group that gives them the announcements. So you can give them one of two, both of them. You can just give them portal administration, whatever the case is that works best for your guys' district. But it does need those three key pieces of information for them to be able to have the administrative access that those administrators need. Now, if you're setting up non-network users, I always go to substitutes as my example. A lot of districts, they're not going to have an Active Directory account. There's really no need for them. They're part of the district, but they don't have an Active Directory account because of the fact that they're just substitutes. So they could have a personal email address. They could have a district issued email address, whatever the case is for them, whatever works for your district. It's the same process. You would come in here, give them, first name, last name, and then whatever email address they're going to need to be able to access employee access from, whether it be that personal email address or it be that district issued email that you've given them. Plug that email in there. Because they're a non-network user and they don't need to be an administrator, you don't have to give them any group. Now, if you've set up a special group, kind of like what we talked about in the other screen in groups, if you set up a special group for them to help categorize, which you can do, doesn't really do you any good, but you can do it, then you could give them a group. Otherwise, you can just leave this blank. And then this add user will turn blue once you have those three fields filled out. Hit add, and then it will create them in this list for you. Now, when that happens, when you create that user, they're going to get an email that says, hey, you have been added to Glendale Elementary School's employee access. Please follow this link to get yourself registered. And it'll be the self-service link or the employee self-service on the very end of it, and it will send them to employee access. They will click on that link, sends them out there, username or email address, password, and then it takes them into the registration page, just like it would for regular employee or for Active Directory employees. Excuse me, same. So the process is the same, whether they're a non-network user or an Active Directory user for logging in and registering, that is all the same. Now, if you have federated with the Okta agent, which it depends on which one you chose when you did federation, but the one thing I do know about Okta is that if you federated with the Okta agent, they can get a second email from Okta that requires them to verify with Okta as well too. So for your non-network users, they could get two emails, one from employee access and one from Okta. If Okta already recognizes them, they probably won't get that Okta email to register, but just in case, I'm throwing that out there. It's come up a lot in questions from different districts and things like that when they're getting those Okta emails, is that will happen, is that they can get a second email from Okta asking them to verify themselves within Okta as well. So when it comes to setup on the administrative side of employee access, that's it. Couple things with branding images, custom messages. The biggest one is setting up your administrators and any non-network users that need to be set up to have access to employee access as well too. Other than that, that's it. So that's the cool thing about it, is that the setup piece of it really does not take that long. It's really quick and simple, and it brings it out. I'm going to kick us into the home page real quick. There, cool. So with that, what kind of questions do we have?
Just to verify that we're not manually having to create users in the employee access portal.
Not for all of your employees, no. The only reason that you would need to create a manual user would be if you have like a substitute that doesn't have an Active Directory account, or your administrators. Those are the only ones that are going to be set up as what we call manual users, basically, because they don't have that Active Directory account. There is an import function within user management. So if you've got like 10 subs that you need to set up as users, you can just do an import of them and it will import those in, create those users in user management for you, and fire off those emails. So it kind of makes it a little bit faster.
Any other questions? Yes.
So the announcement role that you talked about, is that just you having somebody else besides the system administrator, like announcements on that?
Okay, so for the, are you not, did you hear?
Yes, I did. I heard the majority of it, but I got the gist that it's just on top of the, as somebody else besides the portal administrator can do announcements. Yes, that's what that's for.
Let's see. I'm trying to rearrange my window here to see if anything shows up in the chat.
Yeah, it's right there on the screen.
I can't see it. Oh, wait.
Can
This?
you please clarify portal administrators? Are these only employees who will manage the portal? Yes. Portal administrators, anyone that has the portal administration group should only be those employees who have the authority to manage the portal itself. So only those people who have the ability or have the authority to go in and change the banner information, change the custom messages on the enterprise launcher, do any kind of administrative access to the portal itself. So if you want somebody to just be able to do announcements, you can give them that announcements role and that's it. They're not going to be able to do anything else in those other screens, vice versa. So you want to make sure that anybody who has that portal administration group is only for those that have that authority to make any kind of changes like that out here on employee access.
Yes, we got another one.
I just got my URL like yesterday. Can I get her contact information?
So yes, you can. We'll give it to you like on the down low though.
I
So
have to pay for it.
yes, we won't put it out on the internet and such. Anybody else? Anybody online? Anybody here have any more questions?
Just to clarify, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify, so once we add a user in employee maintenance, then it will automatically make the user in the dashboard? Or I'm sorry, employee access, iVisions?
It depends on how it works at your district, I guess, because there are some districts that you have to have the employee maintenance record created before like your Active Directory account gets created, that kind of thing. As long as they have an employee maintenance record, they have an Active Directory account that they can use to log in, your employee is ready to go. So if they've already gotten like their email address and their password stuff, but you don't have the maintenance record created yet for whatever reason, it's their registration is going to fail, because basically what happens is that they put in their email address, they put in their password, it takes them to the registration page. The registration page is a one-time thing, and it asks for last 4 digits of the social, the birth date, and the zip code. It has them verify that info. That information is verified against the employee maintenance record to make sure that they are who they are and they're supposed to be there. Once that's done, it creates that unique identifier. So if they've got their email address, they've got that stuff, but employee maintenance isn't done, their registration is going to fail. So it's kind of those two things in conjunction that basically says that your employee is ready to go.
So is that Avondale, Noemi?
No, it's Agua Fria.
Agua Fria. Okay.
Close.
I was thinking, because we have some districts that we have set up that do a file export after they're put into employee maintenance. We send them a file of new employees, and then they go ahead and create the Active Directory record based off of that file we sent. So there's like a day delay after it's in employee maintenance. I don't think we have that set up for Agua Fria. Jeff,
We do not, no, we don't.
Okay. All right. So,
We
but-
manually enter
Well,
everyone
that's
into
the
iVisions.
way to do it, if you'd like to do it. If there's a way to automate things, or if you have IT staff over there, they're interested in kind of automating that a little bit, we can help out with that. We have a couple districts that are doing that. So,
Okay,
Courtney?
Just some specific questions on benefit enrollment, because that sounds like it's pretty new that it got rolled out. So is that on the platform of employee access, or is it still sitting on the old platform?
Benefits enrollment is our special project. I'll say that for benefits. No, right now, for anybody that is going to be going through any spring enrollment with benefits enrollment, we're going to have you do it on the DNN platforms that you're currently on. We are going through the testing with the benefits specialist team to make sure that we've hit as many cases as scenarios as possible for the new employee access with the benefits module. There's so much testing that's involved in that. It's kind of put us behind a little bit in releasing the benefits piece out in employee access, but we are hoping to have that finalized here relatively soon. I hesitate to give any hard rock dates because I've done that in the past and had to kind of humbly come back to clients and say, I'm really sorry, but please give me more time. So we're trying really hard to finalize that testing and finish that stuff out. We're getting very, very close. But in order to ensure that there are no hiccups for districts or we're not causing any unnecessary stress on you guys, we're going to have spring enrollment clients go ahead and go through open enrollment for spring on the DNM platforms that you're used to. And then once that's done, we'll start transitioning them into using the new employee access. So I don't have an exact date of when benefits is released, but we do have a plan for those that are going through spring enrollments here within the next month and a half to continue to be able to utilize DNN. And then as soon as that's done and we're ready to release benefits, we'll start working with our benefits clients, specifically with the benefits specialist team and my development team, myself included, to help transition those benefits over to the new employee access.
So do we know any Arizona districts that have already fully implemented employee access? Because we pumped the brakes on our plans because of the benefit enrollment, so we're trying to wait for benefit enrollment to this season to go through, and then we're going to implement at the end of May.
So-
I'm wondering if the other districts have.
So I don't know, I can tell you, I know the districts that went ahead and started first were the ones that didn't have any portal before. So there was no transition. They're not missing anything because they never had anything to begin with. As far as the group that the county works with, we have a handful that have the sites up, but they aren't really fully functional yet. We have a handful that are still waiting for the employee access, or sorry, for the benefits enrollment part to come out. We did have a meeting internally with our districts yesterday afternoon, talking specifically about employee access implementations and what we were going to do and what we're working on doing with them. And our general word was to them says, you're going to get the portal whether you're ready or not. And then if you're doing benefits enrollment, then you just do benefits enrollment, like Stephanie said, through your DNN site now. And then hopefully things are up and running by the time your new employees start coming in August, August-ish timeframe, fingers crossed. But benefits enrollments is easily probably the most complicated part of anything Tyler has ever done with the product. Even on the DNN stuff, if you do benefits enrollments, you always have to contact Tyler to have it set up because it's just that complicated. And the rewrite seems equally as complicated. So it's one of those things, when it happens, it happens. And then we'll worry about it then. Any other questions? I thought I saw a question pop up online. Veronica?
I think for the first time setup, we can use the import function to add all employees, correct? Well, for the first time function, you can use that import option to import in anybody that is not in Active Directory. If there's anyone that's in Active Directory, you don't have to worry about doing anything with them. Their username and passwords are their email addresses and their network passwords. They're good to go on that piece of it. So when it comes to those folks, you don't have to do anything with them. Give them their user roles and employee maintenance and they're off and running. For anyone that does not have that Active Directory account, that does not have that email address and password given to them by the districts, then, or in that Active Directory setting, then you can definitely use that import function to add all those employees into user management for sure.
I think I had another question in here, yes?
So back to the benefits piece. Are we thinking by June 30?
So
what happens, we do our open enrollment, but then if we switch over and we have a new hire May or June.
So what do you do then, right?
We are 100% committed to having this done by our June 30th deadline. We are doing absolutely everything in our power to make sure and ensure that the benefits piece is done by the time our June 30th deadline hits. Not only that, I'm pushing exceptionally hard to have it done before then. So when it comes to those kind of scenarios, we should not have a problem with any of that. If we get there and something happens and I have to have those conversations, I definitely will. But as of right now, where we sit in the testing phase of everything and where everything is sitting in development, we should not have any problem with that at all. And we will do basically whatever we have to do to ensure that this is ready to go. The benefits piece is ready to go by June 30th, because everything else is there. It's just benefits. That's basically the holdup.
Yes, Francie.
So how would we even do that? Like if we go live, say in May with the new employee access, and But now I have classified staff coming on board in July, and they're doing, and benefits isn't up yet in the new employee access. How do I even explain to a new employee, like, this is employee access, but here's this other link that you can only do benefits on? Like, are we really gonna be living in two worlds for a little while?
For those people that you just need to do the benefits enrollment, yeah, they're gonna live in two worlds for a little bit. But for the most part, they're gonna be new employees, so they're not gonna know any different. So to them, it's all just one word, just one world, just two different sites. For the people that's been there and they're like used to going to iVisions and they're trying to get used to going to employee access, those people you don't need to worry about. And then the old ones, the new ones you're gonna get, I don't think you need to worry about that much either.
Maybe on my old one, I gotta break down most of the items, but maybe.
Yeah, you kind of, I would probably just, if you're at that point where you launch the employee access portal and you just need the DNN site for your benefits enrollment, I would totally bare bones everything. Strip everything out, hide any pages that you don't need them access to, where it's just you log in and the only thing you see is benefits enrollment at that point. That would be my suggestion. We just go in there as the host or the admin of that site and just hide all those other pages because they don't need to get to them. You'll leave the page open where they need to do the registration, the employee registration, and you'll leave the page open to do the benefits enrollment and strip everything else out.
We have had benefits enrollment clients that have transitioned to employee access, and that's exactly what they've done. They've just gone into the DNN site, stripped everything out except the benefits, and then they only have them log in there if it's a new hire or a life event, something like that. So there have been benefits clients that have done the transition already, and that's exactly what they've done.
Yeah, I'd even change the logo on the site. Let's just say Dysart Benefits Enrollment Portal and leave it like that.
Okay. Yeah. So we have the 45 days, like when we switch over, or something about 45 days. So if the benefits isn't up and running, that 45 days be extended, that they can still do the benefits and the DNN?
Yes.
Yep. If you're a benefits client and you have benefits enrollment, that 45 days, we extend that out. We pull that out so that way that it does not shut down the DNN site for you guys because of the fact that it's on benefits and where we sit with benefits. We can't turn your guys' site off at 45 days if there's a piece of it that you have to have that's not functioning because it's waiting on us. So for benefits clients, 45 days doesn't apply.
Good questions. Anybody else here or online looking at the chat? All right, I think we got everything. That was definitely by far the most informative session I've seen on employee access. For those of you that are watching online, those of you who are here, we are recording all of this. So we will have this posted in its entirety next week on our YouTube channel. So make sure you're on the email. If you got the invitation to be on today's thing through the Ease mailing list, then you'll get the link for whenever that's available. Or you can go to our YouTube channel and just subscribe on there and you'll get notification when we upload it next week anyway. So Stephanie, thank you so much for volunteering the time to come on here. And we appreciate everything Tyler has done for us. I really appreciate the cookies because they're delicious. You people that are attending virtually, sorry. The cookies are good. You're just missing out. So anybody else? We good to move on? All right, Stephanie, thanks you very much for, I'll give you a little round of applause here.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you for letting me come in and crash your guys' party for a while. And just so that you guys know too, we are working on new content videos to put out there for everybody that goes through a lot of this setup, but then it also is going to go through each individual menu and kind of give a little bit more breakdown as well too for that informative stuff. So you'll have something coming out here soon, new updated videos, and we're working on new updated documentation as well too. So within the next couple of weeks, once we get that rolled out, we'll start getting those posts and stuff out there and then making more of that available once we get them done.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to that. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.
All right. All right. For everybody else, before we move into our next little section, we're going to talk a little bit about tips and tricks. We are going to take a little 5-minute break, 5-10 minute break so you can go stretch your legs. I know it's like after lunch. So if you need to use the restroom, restrooms are out the door and to the left. If you're watching virtually, feel free to take your laptop to the restroom with you. I really don't care. As long as your camera is off That's okay with me. I do it all the time, I'm sure. This is actually the only user group meeting I've had to put on pants on for like 2 years, which has been amazing. So we'll take a little, it is almost 2 o'clock, so we'll come back in about 5 to 10 minutes. If you're here, get a snack. If you're away, get a snack. We'll see you in 5 minutes, everybody. All right, so for tips and tricks, like I was saying, Ms. Betancourt was out today. So, but luckily we have people in the room here. Probably amongst the people that are just here, we probably have like 2,000 years worth of Infinite Visions experience.
But we're only 5 friends.
Some of you are a little older than others. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tracy, and just Tracy or Tracy and Jim?
The
All right.
JT Academy.
I will turn it over to Tracy and Jill to kind of walk through some of the tips and tricks that we found. We have been doing a lot of site visits lately. If you've ever tried to get a hold of one of the girls, and I say the girls, I like Tracy, Jill, and Annette, they're out all the time on sites at different school districts throughout Arizona. Where were you at?
Apache County.
You were at Apache County.
Snow, the week of the snowstorm.
Yes, so there is no place too far for us to travel. So in doing so, we run across situations where like, oh, you didn't know this, or you could do this, kind of things where you either forget about, or you were only taught those things that were, given to you by the person that had your job before you. So we're kind of backfill some of those stuff. So I'll turn it over to the ladies here and see what they can show us.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. So I'm glad to be back with everybody again. It's been since November of 19 that we got to do this the last time.
Wow.
I know. When you say 19, it feels like forever ago. So yes, Diana usually gets to do the tips and tricks. And so I kind of feel like it's a big honor that we get to do it for her because we rely on her so much for those things because she sees so much. But like Mike said, Jill and I brainstormed very quickly. We tend to work better at last minute pressure. Even though we've been thinking about this for a week, we were like, it's next week. It's next week. So now we're sitting here and we're like, tips and tricks. Because Mike is a great boss at leveraging. Yes, very good.
That sounded like sarcasm.
No. Okay, so there was a comment that came up because we were on a hot mic and I didn't realize it. Kind of feel like a politician now, huh, Brenda? And yes, we are going to start up the TCP user groups again. So those of you that use TCP, either in the room or on the world wildest web, if you have not been part of those groups, however long ago it was that we did them, please email me and I will add you to the list. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of changed emails when I send it out, which is fine, not a big deal, but I want to make sure that I can get everybody and anybody invited once we're able to get that stuff going. So just wanted to put that plug in for a quick second. So right off the bat, something that Jill and I, and even in our office, we've experienced is we are really into exporting data from visions, right? We love that, especially into Excel, because you can do all kinds of different formatting and undo and redo without having to clear selection, and redo all that stuff again. But something that we have found is a lot of you are on Google Docs and a lot of you use SharePoint. I totally understand why. You can export all day long using those formats. The import, not so much. Visions does not like and does not work well with importing through Google Docs or having a document on SharePoint. And I'll take it an extra step further because of some of the different positions that I know are in the room plus online. I'm sure many of you that use SharePoint have had that same experience uploading documents through ADE's website. And then, so another thing that also happens is you have that stuff, budget AFR, and everything has to be kept in the same folder. Well, in order to upload it, you move that one file to your desktop to do it. All right, it appears that it went up okay. Yep, everything was successful. Then you go to download it to see it. And what does it say? # ref # in all of your cells, because you moved that file out of that folder that had all the linking documents in it, because all that stuff is still sitting on SharePoint. So just know that you do need to take a few extra steps and put stuff on a non-network location if you're using Google Docs and or SharePoint. Okay. The other thing is, so first, let me say, I want to thank Quay Bolton at Agua Fria, Quay Bolton Latari. I'm not used to, I mean, I've never said the Latari before, but anyway, I squirrel, with Agua Fria, and also Beth Strickler with Wilson. They both were gracious to let me use their databases for using CellSense. And as Jill and I were going through the tips and tricks, and we came up with this one, we're like, oh, who are we gonna use? I'm like, I'm gonna use Agua Fria because I created this report for her. So thanks, Quay, for letting me use it for one other thing. But one thing that we have found is I love the tab version of Visions. As a former district person, I was the thorn in Mike's side and Ken's side for having not 1, not 2, not 3, most often 4, if not 5 sessions open at any given time. And I was constantly getting kicked off. Got to the point where my email, the only thing was a subject line, no detail in the body, kick me off was all I had to say. And I've had to pay my dues. But we don't have to do that now, right? Because we have the tab version. But what we have found is if you have more than one session of the same fiscal year open, you will give yourself some grief. What happens is you have the same tables running in the background, and Visions is not sure which session to update and refresh. So you may be in, creating a report, let's say, and you're in one session and you jump over to the other session that's the same fiscal year and you're like, what's going on? Where's my stuff? Well, it's because you have 2 of the same fiscal years open. You can have 2 different fiscal years open, but just don't have 2 of the same fiscal years. And when you have a bunch of tabs open at the top, every once in a while, not every once in a while in a week or a year or a month, but every once in a while during the day, close your tabs. Let your data come back and refresh itself. And so, do you know how to close all of your tabs without clicking on them one by one? Because unless you have nothing to do, keep doing that. Sometimes we need that mental break. But if you have a bunch of tabs open, you simply all have to come up to view, close all but this tab. Now, I'm going to go, because it's specific to whichever tab you have highlighted. Come on. So if I have a journal detail highlighted, close all but this one, look, it will always keep your main one open. But then if you know for sure you want to keep your journal detail open or another tab open, even if it's the 5th one down, if you're clicked once on that tab and you do close all but this, it's going to close all the ones surrounding it. So, I mean, just kind of a cool thing. And then is everybody familiar in using, sorry, this isn't my laptop. So how do I do this, Mike? Well, I don't know because it's not my laptop, but F11 to collapse. Okay. So one thing that Jill and I were actually talking about the other day is we always get a giggle because, my favorites, some people like them, some people don't. I've actually never set up my favorites. I'm so used to having to go to where it was. I don't know. It's like Jill importing journal entries and me just typing it in. I'm like, Jill, I'm just as fast doing it as you are exporting and then doing it. But Which,
She's not. I did educate her on that one.
well, I will say, the only difference, and I do love this for the import, is the changing of the description on those single lines and, being able to copy that down, because then you can filter and search for it on account detail or journal detail or something. That is a plus, but, your F11 to collapse, just something like that. Personalizing your grid, believe it or not, I was out at a district and somebody was like, what do you mean I can change that? I'm like, what? Where have you been? Under a rock? Yes. So change your sizes. I will tell you though, if you go to your font size of large or extra large, and yes, contacts and the good old lady, I call them my old lady glasses. It does reduce what your ribbon shows you. So if you're used to summing a column or something, or even where it'll show you the list of records that's on your grid, depending on your monitor size, that resolution, and what size you have for your font, it will eliminate some of that stuff. So just kind of.
Also, when you're working with style colors, if you go black, because so many people, we like to have things black, it affects when you're shadowing, when you
Yes.
select your buttons, it actually is black. You might not see who you are. So play with it 5 times over, change the font, change your grid colors.
Yeah.
Grid colors are huge. It will ease your eyes once you separate your grid colors.
But pick pretty colors. I've seen some of the colors y'all pick.
Yeah.
Oh, so, okay.
Most of you are colorblind.
So yes, I agree. So that's the core color, right? And bless all of you that love the neon colors.
Oh,
Bless you. And bless you that love the dark red and the dark purple.
right.
Change it.
And if you change your background color, it doesn't remove the orange or
Right.
the fluorescent that your administrator made out hot pink. It won't remove it. It just makes it small. And
Right.
versa.
Yeah. But it's always fun when new connection groups are created. And yesterday I went into one that I hadn't realized that they had created their new year one. And I was like, woo, that is some different
Yeah.
green, yellow. So, whew, yes.
Probably the coolest thing I saw, and it probably doesn't work for everyone. And I apologize if that person is in this room saying it was so long ago, I don't remember it. They had a rotating cycle of colors for fiscal years, and then bought folders that match the color of the fiscal year they were choosing.
Oh, yeah, no, this is, yes,
So it's-
100%.
So they had like yellow and red and orange, and the color and even envision matches the colors on the file folders that they bought for that year. So I thought it was an interesting thing to do. It's not gonna work for everybody, but it certainly wouldn't work for me, because I'll just assume pick the nearest folder to me.
I think another option is, I've heard, we don't do this, but another district will make all their other connection groups white. And
Oh.
their current connection group of color.
So-
You know, if it's white, it's an old connection.
Yeah.
Those of us that have experience and know Roger Studley, who was way down south in Bowie and is up in Humboldt, and now he's retiring. I really liked his philosophy. When you're in your encumbrance period, that beautiful time of July and August, the year that just ended, that all you're doing is really paying invoices, he made red. The year before that, he made red. That year was a yellow. And then the current year was a green. And I was like, that's kind of,
And always kept that.
and always kept that. Yep. So that his staff would know at a quick look, if I'm in yellow, ooh, this is encumbrance. What am I doing here? Should I be in here? So I thought that was kind of cool.
Do that with provisional, like make it like allowed it.
Yeah, we used to do
obnoxious,
that,
So
yeah.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And in Deer Valley, they were like, oh my gosh, I'm like, yeah, now you know you're in test.
that's a great idea. I've never thought about changing a color for a provisional
Yeah,
because it says it, but it's not impactful.
right.
You know, it's like provisional, you know, right? Because it's that cloud flowing, provisional. So something else, once you roll your payroll over and you're not processing payroll yet, go into payroll default settings, clear your time card interface URL, especially if you're using TCP. If you have a provisional, go in and clear your URL. TCP is a non-annual file. Visions is an annual file.
Show us, show us. I was thinking that same thing.
This,
For those that don't see it.
whoa, what am I doing?
Yeah. and then
There we go.
that's better.
Okay,
You need to put your glasses on.
well, the mouse is super slick on this countertop and phew. So I go into my payroll configuration, default settings, time card interface. So Agua Fria does not use TCP. They actually use Frontline. So it interfaces completely different, but this is where for TCP districts only, you have to make sure that there is only one connection group that has the URL. It may not give you grief the first couple times, but it will give you grief. And then you won't know it gave you grief until you have to then do a supplemental or an off-cycle payroll. Okay, holidays may or may not process correctly. If you're using Facetune for leave interface, leave balances may or may not come over correctly. If you are updating an employee with supplementals or things like that, those may not talk correctly. So just be aware and be cognizant. And I'm going to pick on Brenda, so I'm sorry. So Brenda does payroll for Glendale Elementary, and Valerie is the director of finance. Now, there is probably, no reason why Valerie would have to come and say, okay, Brenda, guess what I did today? I created a provisional. Okay, what's Brenda going to do with that if it's not a project she's working on? Nothing. But what Valerie needs to know is you create that provisional, you roll and create your new connection group, and you roll your payroll, go in and clear that URL, or it's going to give Brenda and then the employees that she pays some issues. Thank you for being the guinea pig on that. So the other week I had a very interesting question. A district received a public records request, and the public records request was, I want to see all of your POs, your vendor names, your vendor ID numbers, the line description, the amount, and the account code since October 4th to today. All right, how are we going to do that? Because you've got a couple different segments there. So an interesting thing that, because at first we're like, we'll go into PO pay history. No, because that doesn't really give us, you've got to check off all those things. So one thing that we did that they had not been familiar with is, because it's October 4th, right? Kind of like the auditors. You only give them what they're asking for, nothing more, nothing less. So we went into the control panel and we're like, okay, so because we also had to include if there were any revisions. And we didn't need the rec, we didn't need the PO. And instead of exporting all of this to Excel and then doing filtering, I said, well, you've got your PO date. So why not use one of the cool little carrots for less than, greater than to do your POs on? What are you talking about? And I was like, what? So we did our date with ascending, let me make this, and honestly, you could do it any way you wanted to. And let's say I want this date. And I just went in here and did greater than. This is not going to work, is it?
No, that's not, did you just put a period?
I did.
Put your old lady glasses on.
I
This is
know.
definitely not
There we
something
go.
like-
Shift. Use your shift. So I asked it for everything greater than June 4th. Whose idea was this to have on a Friday afternoon?
Right?
Right, Courtney? So that gave us the start of the information that we needed. We knew from there we could then export, and then we could get rid of all the extra stuff that we needed, because we didn't need the DAC or the requester, things like that. And then we went into the vendor maintenance file, because this gives us our vendor name, but not our vendor ID. They wanted the vendor ID and the vendor email address. So you have to show that you do or do not have the vendor email address. This district happened to have not many email addresses for their vendors. Okay, that's fine. But then you could merge those two Excel documents, and we were able to come up with the records retention request. But it was an interesting prospect to think about, because it was October 4th. So, and the other thing, so it wasn't an individual, it was a business. They also had a statement in there: contact us and let us know what accounting software you're using, because we probably already have the reports set up for you to pull your data. So they're making rounds to start doing some public records requests. So just some things with, using a greater than or less than. So I'm going to clear this, and then one thing that I really like that I did not take advantage of a lot is doing a find instead of a filter by this parameter, because this works a lot better with numbers. If you're looking for a specific number and period 76 cents or whatever, use your find versus your filter for and putting in parentheses signs. Your percent, sorry. Your percent sign is kind of like a wild card. You're saying, I want you to search for this much, like TH or NT. And it's going to give you everything that has those few characters in that percent sign. Well, sometimes that can just be too much data and you don't want to see that much data. So think about your find. Also too, don't forget everything that is on your right click, it's up here on your ribbon as well too. Now you can, I don't know if any of you have done this or not and been like, what did I do? You came here and accidentally clicked default ribbon minimized when you were setting up your fancy new preferences and stuff like that. Because then you come in and you go, and I'm just going to go back to the control panel again. Maybe. There we go. And you're like, what happened? You just have to click on edit again, and then it drops down. I know I did that initially because I thought I would like that. Me personally, I didn't like it, so I took that feature off. Yes, grid layouts. So a lot of your people that are processing the documents, payroll, accounts payable, the people we rely on for attention to detail, they have gotten very familiar and comfortable with sorting their grids and saving that grid layout. Us people that don't do those things tend to forget about those. But don't forget, you can do your grid layout as well too, and also click on the header and go and find what you're looking for. Because if you find that you're always wanting to see what what revision number is always coming up. You want to see who has the most revisions. And then you want to see the PO number. You don't care about the rec number or the rec date, right? Because that's already happened, that's already passed. You know, you like to see things in a certain order. Change your grid layout to that. Come to your grid layout, save grid layout, name it whatever you want. And if you like, for example, how many revisions have been done? I want to see the most vendors that we are making revisions on. Revision quantity, and you can make that a default, and you can also save the filter and the sort. So if you have the sort as descending, the highest at the top, when you pull down this grid layout, it's going to give you that information every single time. Just a feature that sometimes we forget about. All right, something else that I think is super slick is General Ledger Report Writer. I love this feature. I use it all the time. There are times that I have come to this instead of using my revenue and expenditure budget detail reports. I just like the functionality and the multiple ways that I can sort and roll things up. So what I mean by that with rolling things up, I am very much an advocate of balancing my budget every single month. I don't wait until revision time. I don't wait until end of fiscal year. I have a report that I've created that actually mirrors the roll up that is in the budget and the AFR. And what I mean by that is, so again, thank you, Quay. Let me get to her deck. So budget fund reconciliation is what she happened to call it. So if you notice here, see where the zeros are? When you're in your GL report writer, those zeros, all it tells it to do is roll it up. I don't want the detail in those elements of the account code string. And when I'm doing an overview reconciliation of my budget, I don't want the detail. I want this overview summary because if I find something categorically, I at least know my bare minimums to go into account detail and then do question mark logic to get the specific if I need to make an adjusting entry or not. But with this format, you have your fund and you pick whatever funds you're using. And then my program, and yes, program, there is 610, 620. I get that, but at 600 at a minimum is what I want, because then I know I can drill down into that more. And then my function, I only care about my first two numbers, because I don't care about the 2230, the 2570, the 2510. I just want to know big picture categorically. Same with my object code. And at the end of the day, I don't care about my unit, my course, or my project. The other thing that I really like now with this, well, and it's been a couple years, is, and old habits, I'm guilty. I tend to have a habit of going in and changing my from and to date, because that's what we used to have to do. But it already comes up with your fiscal year to date column. So you don't have to do that. And so you're getting a side by side.
How much data did you pull?
Right? I'm thinking that you like pulled her entire,
Mm-mm.
it was question mark logic on the fund. So you pulled
Well,
everything?
no, because you select your specific funds on your criteria on the right side.
I didn't see you had done that. Okay.
If I didn't have a fund selected, it wouldn't process. It would tell me I needed something. So you can see right here, see my roll up? So now categorically, I can take this and know, compared to my last revision, what I need to do with making things happen.
Tracy.
And look, this is only 6. I know there's other people, huh?
I know, just remember, people online can't see you pointing to the screen right now. They're like, what the hell is she doing? Just walking out right
Your
there.
little mouse.
It's kind of like nodding your head on the telephone.
Somebody- Yeah.
I don't know.
Did somebody have a question?
Nope. But you can see this is only 6 pages. But this is a nice quick snapshot. And I like having it built to have for my revisions and my AFR. And then at any given time, you know, maybe you're wanting to look at this for classroom site fund because you're going from your 3 funds to your 1 fund, and you want to see how things need to be shifted into, you know, having a bigger picture of just the 10 instead of all your different breakout. Or if you're wanting to do a comparison with your capital override and your capital outlay, that kind of thing. Let's see. Oh, and all right. If you guys don't use this, if you think it's something you're interested in, let me know. Send me an email. I'll send you the print screen of what that filter criteria is so that you can set it up if you want to. Because the other thing that's really cool that I don't know if a lot of people know about is, okay, so it goes through every single number that's in every one of those elements. But like for this, we know we only want expense, right? So are you telling me I have to scroll from 0, 100 all the way to the 6,000s? No, because there's a cool action feature. You can select by element mask. I can do my 6. Ooh. And then filter by that. It will highlight all my 6s for me without me going in and clicking for it. So there's little tips in there that we may or may not use very often that can help us be a little bit more efficient. I feel like this might be kind of late, but then it might also be useful for people is mass account creation. So we all had ESSER, right? So I'm going to pick on 346. Let's say they come up with a 356. Well, who wants to go in and manually add all that stuff? No, not I, said the fly. So you come up to your actions, create new accounts by mask. So here's what's cool. Whatever is on the grid, you go is what you are going to be copying to, except for the element that you decide to replace with a new number. So if you like everything that's on the grid, but let's say you want it to all be program 100, you would just come into program, put in 100, click OK. You are going to get an exact duplication of what's on your grid, plus with the 100 in the program code. It does.
It's not replacing, but
it's adding, right? It's creating. Yeah, yeah.
And if you only have like one set of maybe 10 codes on your grid because you filtered that deep, it'll just create those 10 with whatever the element is you're asking for.
And that's actually something to keep in mind when you're working with your chart of accounts and account code input grid. Whatever is on your grid is going to be impacted by any of the action items that you take. So for instance, if you want to inactivate, right? You want to change the account status. And let's say I have all this on my grid and I only highlight 2 of them. No, it's going to take everything on the grid and inactivate it, even though I only had those 2 highlighted. So just something to be aware of. Now what's kind of nice is you accidentally do that and you're like, just come over to your show only, do your inactive or all, they're back on your grid again, go back up and change the status back to active. Did I put you to sleep yet? Not yet? Okay. All right, that's what I have for tips and tricks. Anything you guys can think of that you've come up with? Yeah,
When you're in the benefits grid, is there a way to change just one field to 0? Not all. So I know you can go up and say, change my fields to 0, then it changes all the fields. What if you just wanted one field?
so let's take a look. I haven't looked at that.
Because when you can't, it won't let you put a 0, trying to replace you, that feature to replace. It won't let you times 0. That's to figure out a way, unless I import it out and put it back in, but I wanted a way just to do it.
Is it on an employee or under the deduction itself?
No, on the whole, like if you pull up the grid, an employee, go to payroll process in an employee.
Okay.
So I wanted to just make the employer maximum 0, just that one field.
Like a mass assign?
Oh, no.
What?
What about?
Well, and
You have tips and tricks for me.
no, I know, and I know, but when you step back and you kind of think about why, it's a safety check for you. But it does let you do, like you were talking about, that export and then the import, because then it knows that you're touching the fields and the lines that you specifically want. Where if they made that as a mass action item, whew, yeah,
That could be it.
yeah. Which, and
You might have been able to do that at one time
I feel like if you
until
put it in
someone peed in the pool.
Right.
And
there, like you put it in there and it asks you, are you sure you really want to do this?
Right.
And that's your warning.
It is, but you
Well-
know, people don't read those warnings. We get called that all the time.
Just like that sign that said,
and I mean, unfortunately, the number of times that somebody accidentally imports a blank budget from budget export to import, and they've deleted their entire budget, it's probably at least 4 or 5 every fiscal year.
Nice feature though would be, are times it would be very.
Yeah,
but no.
yeah. I'm sorry.
Thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any tips they want to share that they use and you think it would be benefit? Or have any questions before we move to CellSense?
Global search?
Yeah,
I've never
on the-
used that.
on the ribbon bar.
There's at
Oh.
the bottom.
Do I need to have something open? I've never used it.
It's just that bottom, right, like
The
paper
little-
with magnifying glass.
The magnifying glass at the bottom.
Oh, this.
Yep. You know,
I've never used it.
I don't ever find a reason to use it.
It's in dashboard, but it's not working anymore.
Not
So,
surprised, because they're changing everything to work on that new dashboard. So I'm not surprised it isn't working, because it searches every module. Right, I remember when it came out.
Yeah. I don't know.
I bet that's the reason too, because they're,
I'm sure it's probably.
yeah.
Because Tyler's not big on taking away functionality. They're okay with adding functionality to something else to push you. But once it's there, it'll be there forever. It's like the little, you know how you get the little pop-up box when you go to close Infinite Visions and it says, are you sure you want to close it? Yeah, that thing used to be there. It was hard times. For people who always close out of Visions on accident before they put that box.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I'll bring back the cookie I ate earlier. I'll go get another one. She didn't like my answer, so she's leaving.
That's it. Taking a trip, no.
Yeah, I don't blame her. I don't blame her.
I think we can cover CellSense.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah,
Maybe something everyone knows, but if you have something on the grid, like say from employee maintenance, you know, has 1,000,001 column, How can you just reduce it to like the 5 columns?
Oh my God. Okay, so absolutely, absolutely. So if you like, that's part of your grid layout as well too, of not only changing your headers, but if you like to only see 5 certain columns, right? So I'm not going to go into employee maintenance because it's employee maintenance, but I'm going to do the same thing in the control panel on purchasing and payables. So this grid layout is universal. Okay, so I'll clear this and I'll just do apply. Okay. So I don't care about all the rec stuff. I want this column. So I know I want certain columns that are not side by side. So think of this as like you do with Excel. Since they're not side by side, I keep my control key pushed. And then I come over here and I click on this. And I want the status and this. So I have 4 columns. Now you can right click, show columns, and you can come up and then save your grid layout to whatever you want to name it. And you can make this your default if you want to as well too. So now that being said, there's also the hide columns. So if you had more that you wanted to see and you only wanted to eliminate like 2 to 5 of them, you could click on those 2 to 5 that you didn't want to see and always have that hide. Now, the other thing I'll show you, and you've got to clear your selection and then close your window to get rid of that hide and show.
Part of what we were saying about closing your tabs, you did a filter, you did a sort, you made it special, close your tabs.
Right. So if you notice, there's a big scroll bar down here at the bottom, which means you have a lot of options for columns, right? Well, let's go to choose columns. Oh, she likes that. And I mean, this will give you, yep. So in the middle of my grid, I haven't asked for anything yet, or you can have all your stuff up and still do this, but maybe right click, choose columns. And then what it does is it just brings it up in a nicer format for you to be able to go through and see. And you're like, whoa, what the heck? Instead of scrolling all the way across to the right, right? And you've got an actions here, so you can select all or deselect, and you can tell there's some that are already selected and some that are not. If you get back to your district, because you know it's Friday afternoon, who's going to remember this come Monday morning? No.
There's a recording.
There's a recording, or I'll give you my card and you can email me or whatever, and we'll communicate. Okay. Okay.
I do want to point out that if you save a grid layout where you pare down the column that you want to see, if there is a new column that gets added to that screen at a later time by Tyler, you won't see that column until you totally blow away your grid layout, go in and redo it, and then resave it. So new fields and new things that come into the product, you won't be able to see them if you change. Which for most things you do is okay, because a lot of these screens here, they've been so tried and tested that there isn't a whole lot of new changes coming into these screens. But just be aware of that. If you hear about like, oh, I don't see that column, that's why you don't see that column, because you have a grid layout that predates that column.
The other thing too that I think a lot of us don't pay a lot of attention to is this visibility, public versus private. If you have a grid layout that is public, which is being very generous and very nice, right? Let's share. That means that anybody who has access to that module can then change that grid layout. So if you have a format that you specifically like working with, make it private. You're not being unhospitable or, you know. And just tell them that Mike told you to make it private.
April Fools is just around the corner.
Right.
You have a lot of public grid layouts in your district.
Change them all.
Oh my gosh. Now you guys know what's gonna happen, right? Okay, CellSense. Yes, Juanita. Okay, hold on, Juanita. Do you want to hear something? So I used to work at Dysart when I was 2. And Juanita was 2.5. And Juanita actually replaced me at Dysart. My son will be 25 this year.
Oh my God.
I know. Yep. So anyway, okay.
And he's older than you are.
He is, I know, right?
Wow, that's beautiful.
It's the water.
Yeah. I have a question on vendor maintenance.
Yes.
I'm not in that world, so sorry if I'm ignorant, but
No.
we wanted to change a vendor name.
Okay.
And vendor maintenance, it's not allowing us. Is that because of the user access?
So it could be a couple different things. It could be because of the user's access. But if this is your purchasing person and they're the ones that typically set up the new vendors and they're not able to change the name or even an address, it's because an invoice has been processed against that vendor. So there's always the additional remit to that you can use.
Yeah, because you have those other tabs and it says something like.
Here.
Put it on the other tab. So
Yes,
let's say your order from is gonna change. You have to put it on as an additional order from. Yeah, gotta process that invoice and that stuff that's in your invoice processing because it's live and in there. And then there is an action that will replace it.
So you use those other tabs.
Yes.
It's not there, so if you close out that. And from here, highlight him and go to actions.
You can't do it with that one.
Yeah, I know, but don't do it. See
Yeah,
where
no.
it says set your primary address at the top? So it'll go in and move that over. It'll move it over. Just do it on the name too.
It'll do the name too, because when you come over
It's
here,
in live data, we just have to see it.
No, what I'm saying is you can't do that one because it is a payroll vendor.
Oh,
yes,
You cannot change the name of the
No,
payroll
payroll
vendor once you
vendor.
start using it. You can't even put an additional remit in, it's grayed out. We had to re-remember, I think Carrie and I had to re-remember that. We're like, why isn't this working? And I was like, oh yeah, it's a payroll vendor. You cannot swap out the name on a payroll vendor. You just have to create a new one if that's what you need to do.
Even if it was a payroll
vendor. Yeah, payroll vendor, no, okay, because it's embedded in so much other.
Everybody else, you just fill in the additional order, additional remit, and you have to do everything, name, address, phone number, you have to put everything in there. And there's a little checkbox at the very end of that row that says active. Most people forget that little checkbox. If you don't check out that box, it doesn't work. Once you check that box, then you can just swap them out, and it just kind of like just swaps one for the other. Like I said, with the exception of if it's a payroll vendor.
Payroll vendors.
No.
no,
No.
So if you had a check and you had it payable to like ASRS, and then suddenly you want to change the name, so it's my district ASRS, so you can deposit that into your account, you can't do that. You have to create a whole new vendor and then just swap it out on the deduction.
but if it's a non-payroll vendor, this is where, and so here you've got the name. The other thing I will tell you that is a big deal that wouldn't seem like it. You need to tab through all of these fields to the very end to get that checkbox. Even if let's say all you're changing is the name, you have to still tab all the way across.
It's ridiculously far away.
It is ridiculous, right there.
So by the time you get to it, you're probably already exhausted for the day. You're done, right? You have to scroll.
Yes, Tracy.
So it is a payroll vendor. Can you do it at the beginning of the new year?
Yes, if
Mhm.
you haven't, well, you have to, I think you have to deselect them as a payroll vendor first,
Right.
and then do it, and then reselect them as a payroll. I think that is the only instance where you can do that.
So you roll over the new year, you haven't done anything, go in, unselect them as payroll, do your thing, reselect them, and then you should be good.
Before your very first
And
payroll
swap
is,
along, yeah,
processed.
go all the way and swap it from your active, the whole bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, good questions. Okay, do you guys want to see some CellSense? Yay. Do any of you use CellSense? Courtney, you do too? So
But how much does it cost?
it's free.
It's free.
So everybody has this little, it looks like a server with a cogwheel. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know if that's what it really is, but that's what it looks like to me. And really you come into that and into your CellSense. And what I like is it's a quick way to update and refresh unique reports for different people. So I have a couple different reports for you that I wanted to show you. And if anybody, you know, like Mike had said, we're going to be able to, we're going to share those as well too. So goodness, sorry. So with CellSense, the hardest part I had with it was, sorry, you have to create your Excel template first. So you need to know what type of an idea you want your report to look like. So for instance, here's the sample. Okay, we'll do this one. So Beth at Wilson gave me an example of a report that her superintendent, when he was at a former district, wanted to have, and he called it a budget cash flow analysis. And really what it was is it was a breakup of the summary funds, similar to what's at the county treasurer's office, and wanted to see the revenue that came in for a particular month, the expense that went out, and then what the ending balance was. But wanted to have it all on one rolling report. So she showed me what the old report had looked like, and it was in Excel. I was like, yeah, absolutely, we can do that in CellSense and not a problem. And her one question and concern was, well, what do I do if we get a new fund? Which the longest time was never a concern, but lately that is a valid concern. And really all that is inserting wherever it needs to go based on the category. So here is my template that we started with. The other thing that is key is you want to make sure that your template is someplace that visions can point to. So those of you that are on our county, oh, where did we go? That are on our county box, if you're not sure which drive you need to be using, please don't hesitate to call, because what you see when you're on Visions and you go to put it on the desktop, 9 times out of 10, you're putting it on the server's desktop and not your own. And then you're like, where'd my thing go? So that's one thing you always want to be careful of. And honestly, this stuff, why is this not opening? Oh, slow down, Tracy. Okay.
Does it matter what the headers are?
No, because really you're setting up your template. But one thing that does matter is your tabs at the bottom of Excel, it has to say sheet 1. That is the one. And I'll show you that on like a bigger report where we import information as well too. So truly right here, it's another grid, right? And you just go to right click add, and you start putting in information. So I have this one report already created. Oh, yeah. Hello. And it's my cash flow report. So can you see that very well? Is it on this one?
I don't know if it's on that one. You can try it, but it's a cool one.
There we go. So you can see my path. Well, how does my path get there? So if I were to create a brand new one, I'm going to say create, then I'm going to come to my ellipses right here. And this is where it's going to start to point and where you need to know where it's going to be at.
And remember that earlier conversation about where you put this stuff. You're on a Google Drive and you're on a shared drive, this is gonna have a problem. You can't put it out there on your Google Docs and have it see because you're going in and out of it.
So everybody that is hosted through our office, always go to this local disk C drive. This will then be you. And then you'd go to your users. Okay. Typically it's users and then yourself.
Oh, you're talking about the desktop?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't ever save anything on your desktop. There, solve that problem. That's like the worst place to save anything is on your desktop. I mean, put it somewhere else and then put a shortcut to it on your desktop if you really need to. But saving it on your desktop is the most buried place that you can put stuff. And once you put it there, if ever something happens to your account, there's an opportunity for you to lose that stuff. So save it somewhere. I usually recommend, especially when doing a lot of exports or imports, create a directory on your C drive that says budget stuff or vision stuff or voucher stuff, whatever you want to do it. You bury it on your desktop, and the more difficult it is to get that stuff back.
And if you are a Google Drive district or a shared drive district, you put it on your C drive and call it My Vision Stuff. You can save it there and then move it all over once you're done with it to your Google World or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is how that path gets into here. And you can change it. So when you get to, if you're going to be, if you create one and then you need to give it to somebody else and they're going to use it, that path can be changed. So then you have this opened up and you're like, whoa, what is all of that? So what I did is,
Hold on, Tracy, can you open that from within the admin desktop because you were only sharing the admin desktop? So go to File Explorer from admin and then navigate over to that directory.
So close
I didn't think about that when I opened that up. So go ahead and close that.
I know, well, you let me touch technology, so.
I guess that's my fault. I shouldn't have let you touch my-
Right, she's on your computer. You know it's not mine.
For those of you that know, that is a huge gamble.
There's no one in our office that breaks more technology.
Than Tracy.
By far. She's
Want
had
a new
more,
computer, give her yours.
she's had more laptops in the 5 years that she's worked for us than I've had like ever in my life.
Truly, the one I have now, I've had for 2 years. It's worked great, 2.5 years. The first 3 years, I probably went through 8 to 10 laptops. Easy, yeah.
She should. And if she doesn't break the laptop, she breaks the software, so.
Uh-huh.
That makes me feel so much better.
Right? I mean, Carrie and Andy can attest to it. The joke around the office is, has Tracy been in your cubicle? First question. So there is bad mojo in that area. I don't know what it is. I know what it is. They don't like the efficiency that you and I work.
Yes, that must be.
Are you impressed I knew how to get there? I am, and it worked.
Almost like you learned something.
I know, right?
Should do some tips and tricks. is if you're online and you're not watching, if you're not here in person, you're really missing out on a lot of fun.
Right.
And the cookies.
No!
The cookies are freaking delicious. I've had so many, I'm taking the rest home.
For those kids that need to be outside.
Which one was?
Mm-hmm. You know, you sit at your desk and this all makes sense while you're doing it. There we go. Okay. So I know this is going to make a whole lot of sense to everybody and it looks absolutely beautiful. I'm going to go through it. I promise I will, because it did not make sense to me for a long time. And my biggest struggle was I had to come up with what I wanted a report to actually look like to even start with something. So there are no headers on this, and this is going to be an import because there's so much information on it. So if you remember now I have to come over here and close the other one. And this is why Tracy doesn't touch technology. Okay. There we go. So if you remember, this is the outline of the report I want data on, right? So I have all these bazillion fund numbers. And honestly, I took this from the fund balance report because I wanted to have their specific fund number and use their description title so that it made sense to them, and then how they wanted the information going back and forth. So I come back into my CellSense and I'm going to add this all over again so you guys can see it. Ease import. I've never had a different description than my name, just because I couldn't think of one at a different time. This is really, I mean, like a journal entry, this is your data. You put in what makes the most sense for you. And this is actually the only part that frustrates me, is how long it takes to then open up to get to your template. And honestly, I have found it doesn't matter where you have your template, it still takes a while for stuff to open up. Okay, this is throwing me for, no. There. So I'm going to point to my basic template. And when I go back and I think about all this information, the first thing I think about is, that's going to be a lot of information to put in, because how do I start? Okay, here's my sheet number. So it's sheet 1. And really what I like to have is on one monitor, my template, and then my other monitor is where my visions is at, because you have to put your cell address from your template into this address. So it would truly be C4 for revenue. So if you do C4 and then account type, well, I don't know what that is. Oh, that's familiar to me. I know I want that to be my revenue. And your value type, this can get to be confusing, because I know the first few times I looked at this, didn't pay a whole lot of attention. There were more options at the bottom. And I'm like, I have no idea. Well, I want transactions by a date range because my superintendent is looking for that per month. Then it's the account mask. Well, what is my account mask? Well, I go back to my template. Oh, okay. M&O. Come back into my CellSense, and it is this simple. 001, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because In my account type, I already said revenue. So I don't have to put in any element identifier. You can if you want to, but in this scenario, I'm not going to. Well, how much of that data do you want to come over? Well, I want to see 100% of that revenue. And then you put in your date range. So that's a lot of manual entry when you think about this, the report that I want to have completed. So what I created was an import that had everything. And you can see it matches all the way across. Now you're like, but wait, you said C. Well, yes, this X is from like February. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this detail into my CellSense, and you're going to see this report populate. Import detail. Now let's just see if I imported the right spreadsheet. I did not. Oh yeah, so I have to delete these. There we go. No. Yes. You know, it always makes sense when you name this stuff, and then I did look at this yesterday too, I do promise, but there we go, 124 records. So now I'm in here. One thing I will tell you, you do not want to have your template open when you go to populate your spreadsheet. I think it'd be cool to have it open so you could just see it go, but you can't. So I'm going to close this. And then it's honestly as simple as coming up, populate spreadsheet. There's going to be a window that pops up that says, do you want to open up the CellSense report or the cell report? I said yes the first couple times because honestly, I didn't know what it meant. And really all it is it is in a visions format of how all of your cells are assigned. So after enough times of remembering, oh yeah, that's what that is, I say no to it. Come on. So see, it's similar to, you know, like when you have invalid account code strings or something. Come on.
Hold, please.
I know.
She picked a little report for only 1,000 pages. Dang.
Yay. Okay. Here's the sign that you really want. 0 errors detected, meaning it could point and find where you were saying for all of it to go. And then you're like, okay, now what? I need something, right? That's actually it. Then you come over to your template, you know, the report that you wanted, and you open that up. And boom, there's my data. You're like, that's just groovy, Tracy. What about July? You know, I want some other months. You can do mass updates on stuff. Now, what I would recommend is, so you want to change your dates. You want those to be July. So the other thing you want to do first is you want to change your address, because that's no longer X, that's February, right? I want to change all of this to C. So I just do my C on my import, copy it down to where I want it. Do a quick save. Yes, I know my dates are still wrong over here. That's okay. Because I'm going to come over into my template. I'm going to re-import my data. Oh, yep. Forgot about that. Come on. There we go. So I've got my C's right here, but I want to change my dates. All right. So I want to mass update some records. So my data field, what is my data field? It's a value type. Transaction range. Here's where it seems a little backwards at first, but then it makes sense. You actually need to put in what your current value is, and it will pop up with the month that is currently listed. So you put your start and your end date. Then I'm going to change my new value. I still want it my transactions by range, because you can actually change that. I'm going to do July. Look at all of my dates immediately updated. So now I'm going to populate my spreadsheet. I'm going to get the, do you want to open up your cell report? We're going to say no. Zero detected. Awesome. So let's come over here. Boom. So, and this makes total sense. Revenue for the month of July, I wouldn't have any coming in yet, right? But look at how I was able to change it and have it populate. The other report that I have is revenue reallocation. So many of you want to look at where's my revenue as far as local, county, state, and federal allocations, equalization, apportionment, things like that. I put that into a CellSense report as well too. There is data that you do have to get from ADE and from your budget. So here's the report. And basically this is showing you all the stuff that would be for M&O and capital that comes through the state agency, right? On property taxes and things like that. So this information, and really I just went through and started pulling information off of what was on ADE's website through the APOR 64, which is now the BSA 64. And I have little markers and indicators on where I got this information from, because we do have the two different titles because of how ADE updated their platform and stuff like that. But creating the sheet one, because it has to say one, it can't have a name on the tab or anything like that. And in Agua Fria, I created the revenue reallocation. Here's my template. Look at it, it's nice and short, because really you don't have a whole lot of fields that you need to follow for this report at all. And I'm not doing a date range. I'm just gathering in the revenue that's been posted there, because I'm also pulling in what has been posted at the treasurer, object code by summary. So this is a really slick one too that I use CellSense for. Another one is indirect cost. Oh, did I click on the right one? So here's the template for it, or the import. It's a lot of information for that indirect cost report, but you have all of your detail here, because I will tell you, I started doing some of this on just the grid of the CellSense. This Excel is so much easier to tab through and manage than doing it in CellSense. And this is the indirect cost worksheet that gets populated from that template and that import. And this is what you need to be able to upload and comply with ADE. I'm having more fun with this now than before. And especially like, think of your ESSER reports, grants management and stuff. It's a combination of fiscal years that we've never had to report with before. This is a good tool to use to bring your data and start comparing all of your different fiscal years and what you have and what you don't have. Any questions? Any thoughts?
So you're really limited only by how comfortable you are with Excel and how much you know how to do it. So if you think of this as just a way to easily pull information out of Infinite Vision, there's nothing to stop you from having another sheet in here in the same workbook. It's not sheet one that references your sheet one data, and you can generate pivot tables, you can generate charts and graphs and things that look pretty for people who don't like to look at a lot of numbers.
Or they don't like the format of the vision reports, you know, with the headers and all that stuff, and they're just like, ugh. Right.
Because they're ugly and they take up an abnormal amount of space, and sometimes you don't present data in the most easily digestible manner. Excel is a much better reporting tool. So if there's stuff in there, and I've seen people do stuff like pretty board reports in there, stuff that you put out to your parents or your sort of constituents in your district, like, hey, this is what we're spending on this. Here's the graph already done. So instead of you going in there and reinventing the wheel every time you have to do it, you have one template. You just go rerun it with different dates, and it's already done for you. It's a great way to log 4 hours of time that only takes you 15 minutes. But your boss doesn't know, and I won't tell them that it only took you 15 minutes.
Well, and the other feature that I really like is how you can do the mass update of certain fields and stuff. So when you have, I mean, like student activities for a unified district or high school district, student activities, tax credit, auxiliary. Our board members don't understand or know how to read the vision reports that come out. There's too much black all over. And so you put something together that looks a little bit nicer and easier, keeps them happy.
And your board members should always be happy.
There you go.
Right, Courtney?
Always. Our top priority.
Yes.
Cookies and make them happy.
Making my request happen.
Right.
Just give them cookies. Apparently he likes them.
All right.
All right.
All right, thank you, Tracy. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing the screen here. All of the spreadsheets and examples that Tracy had for us today will include on a link of the YouTube description for this meeting once it's up next week. It's going to take a couple days for me to put together because we normally don't shoot videos of this size. So I will do my best. But if there's, let me see if I can. I don't know what I'm doing here. So hold on.
Watching for questions. So.
Jeff watching. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. Are there any more last questions from either in here or in the chat about anything you happen to run into today? If not, we're good. If you are here in person, as far as I'm concerned, you were here till 5 and you may go home. If you are remote, you could try it. You can say, Mike said I'm done, and you can walk out. Totally, I don't have a problem with that. Throw my name down. I don't care. They don't sign my time card anyway. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for those people who joined us online. This was our very first attempt at doing this sort of multicast format where we have a virtual and an in-person thing going on at the same time. And it was really just a necessity because we had Stephanie from Tyler attending virtually, so we had to set that up. And then we had, there was some mass confusion for like that first week. And then the CDC came up with new guidelines. And so things went up. And I don't know, stuff happens. But thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If you are not on the EASE mailing list, make sure you get on that mailing list. And you know if you got the invite for this. If you got the email invite for this, you are on the mailing list. If you didn't get the invite for this, make sure you get on that. So that way you get notification when this gets posted. Have a great weekend, everybody. If you're finishing up spring break, have fun at work next week. If you're going on spring break, enjoy your spring break. If you work in the county office like I do, you didn't get a spring break to begin with. So you should all suffer as we have suffered. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Want to point out Courtney for really pushing to get the employee access done. I can't tell you how often she bugged me every time I walked by. Right? Like even when I just like walk around, she said, "Hey, can we do an EASE meeting and talk about employee access? We really want to talk about employee access." Like literally since last November, she's been bugging me. And we finally got it done. So thank you. Also, thank you, Glendale Elementary, for hosting, and Tyler for springing for the delicious cookies and all the drinks and stuff like that. And thank you for all the iPads that we gave to all the people that were here in person. Yeah, the 48-inch monitors. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. And don't forget to look. We have a couple virtual mini sessions coming up at the end of this month. We have a March one and one in 2 weeks. Quarterly reporting. Jill's going to do quarterly reporting, and then a week after that, I'm doing a payroll session. If you're not signed up, feel free to sign up. Even if you can't attend, if you sign up, at least you'll get, we'll send you notification that the recording was out there and everything. So make sure you get signed up and get on the email list. God, if you're not on the email list, you're really missing out. All right, bye everybody. Thank you.